Oh, yo, shit, this shit's going down. It's so spooky up in this place. I can't even believe it. Yo, what we got? Spooky solutions. Spooky solutions.
When you hop in the tank enough, you see some weird stuff. I'm talking floating rough, like skulls and handcuffs.
What?
In the dock, see a creepy clown reindeer. Gotta get your head cleared. I'm talking floating weird, a dolphin with a beard.
Yo, that's pretty creepy. Yikes! 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 Yikes!
All right, hello again. My name is Graham.
And my name is Juliet.
That's right. Another day, another Juliet. Well, the same Juliet, I guess, actually. And Juliet is one of our Float Tank Solutions team who's in charge of a ton of the content. I've given spectacular introductions of her for the last 3 episodes, so if you haven't heard them already, I recommend going back and listening to those on repeat.
I'm in high demand is really what it comes down to.
And we're kind of answering some floater-centric questions as opposed to more of the construction or marketing kick that we've been on recently. Today's being, what do you do about floaters who have a bad float? Or just a really negative experience in the tank?
Right.
Which I guess are kind of the same thing.
Right. Well, I mean, maybe bad floats can be like it was physically bad, maybe too humid or the water was too cold or something like that.
Yep.
But if it's something internal with the floater and their float experience personally, then yeah. This is actually something that I can speak to a fair amount. I deal with an anxiety disorder, been in treatment for it ever since I was a kid. And so sometimes when I do things like hop in a float tank, spend time by myself, I'll get caught in these negative feedback loops. And being by myself turns out to be a really negative experience. And I spent a lot of time when I first started to float to try to just power through these experiences, and it doesn't usually work out really well. I'll come out in a sort of a worse place than when I went in, because I am my own worst enemy in those experiences. So I've learned that the best thing for me is to just get out and try again later. Sometimes I can just take a breather, get a step back, maybe like shower off and try again. Other times it's like, no, I need a new day for a different float. So just being aware and attentive to that, I think, is really, really important. And even as somebody who has had these really tough experiences, I still hugely prefer floating. Like, it's an awesome, positive experience for me, and I definitely recommend it for people who have a hard time being by themselves because it's important.
Yeah, and I guess there's a few different things that a float center owner kind of needs to respond to on that side, which, I mean, right. Just knowing that you will have people who have bad experiences. Like if you yourself have not had a bad float, then, eventually in the hordes of floats that you do, you will. Mm-hmm. And sometimes for clients, that's their 50th float, in which case they already know that floating's awesome and they just had kind of a weird one.
Right.
And sometimes it's their first float, in which case they often just think that's what floating is. Mm-hmm. So, making sure that, they're okay and they're coming away with this without being concerned. So if they get out after 15 minutes, giving them a refund, or even if they get out after the full float time, and just start telling you about how they had a bad experience. I mean, it's really obvious when the tank is too cold or it's something on the technical side, whether or not the tank is actually cold if they felt that way.
Right.
Our policy is still definitely, refund their floats, take care of them. And I would say on the psychological side too, like if someone has a really challenging float, especially their first time, giving them another chance to get in the tank and offering them a compensated next float, and be like, oh, well, they're not always like this.
Right.
And trying to get that message across, I think, is important.
Yeah, and I think that if somebody, this is like their first or their second or third float, somewhere in those like first few, it can really color the entire perception of floating. I've had friends of mine that I've tried to get in the tank, and they've had bad experiences, and I've had struggles getting them to go back in to try it again because they're just convinced that that's what it's going to be like for them. And I really want to encourage people to keep an open mind and make sure that we remind people to do that too, that this is a normal part of floating for some people, and it doesn't have to be scary. And it's an opportunity, just like anything else, to learn more about yourself and learn where your limitations are. And I think that framing it in that sort of context and letting people know that they're not alone in these experiences, that that people who have had these experiences can still have great floats more often than not. And I think that sometimes floating takes a little more practice for some people. Not everybody can be good at it right away, but I think that it's valuable for everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't have any like mentally challenging floats early on, but I definitely didn't drop into the zone. You know, like it was really hard for me to shut my brain off. Yeah. And in that sense, they were very challenging.
Right.
Just quieting down, you know, and being still and entering that more meditative side of the float. So I definitely relate to people and not immediately just having an amazing experience your first time. You know, it took me, over 10 floats to really be able to kind of sink into that zone.
And I think that this can be a little frustrating for people outside of the that aren't inside, I guess, the industry as well, because everything that we see inside has a lot of hype around it, because there are a lot of really amazing benefits that go along with floating as a practice. And I think that part of that is potentially a little bit of selection bias. And this is actually something I've even talked about with Justin Feinstein, because I think it's something that the entire industry needs to be aware of. That this is something that people might feel disincentivized from sharing, and instead of talking about it, they're just going to give up on floating instead. So
yeah. Okay, I have one other story to tell, which I don't really know what lesson to take away from this, except maybe, you know, it's actually our job to serve sometimes as people who are there to lend an ear and listen to people's experiences when they come out, you know. But I definitely remember one time when I was working the night shift, and I think it was just like the 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. float, like a woman was getting out around 11 p.m., but it was late at night, relatively speaking. And she hung out after like the next round of floaters went in, and I was hanging out talking to her, and she was saying that she just had the like trippiest experience. You could just tell she'd never done psychedelics in her life, you know, and she was saying that she was seeing visions in there that would have put Stephen King to shame, you know, and just these horrible, horrible things in the tank, and that it was freaking her out. And, you know, she was wondering if that was a normal experience. And we ended up talking for an hour or something, and largely me just kind of asking questions and letting her talk. And at the end of that time, she went from just being like very freaked out by the experience and like never wanting to hop in a float tank again to actually booking herself a float and wanting to come back. And she was like, oh, maybe this is actually a good thing to explore that side of myself, or figure out why my brain is conjuring up skulls and snakes and stuff like that, you know?
Right, yeah.
And so it was really, you know, just by kind of listening and letting someone talk through their own experience, it really opened them up, which is kind of, I don't know, yeah, that one always comes to mind when I think of people having bad floats, because like she started that conversation thinking that she was just in a very bad and strange place, you know?
Right. And I think that moments like that for the floater and the float center owner are opportunities. And I think looking at them from that perspective, I think, is probably pretty helpful. And that's how I've learned to stick with it. I was fortunate enough that my really bad floats didn't start until about a year into me already floating a lot. So, which, if that was how I had started, I probably would have had a lot harder time becoming a regular floater and having it be something that has changed my life as much as it has. So
it's like the inverse of gambling, you know? Like it's almost better if you just lose early, and then you're like, oh, I'm never doing that again. Whereas if you win early, you get the little taste of it, you know?
It's exactly like that, yeah. Yeah.
So I relate, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Cool. Well, that was a fun, spooky topic to cover.
Spooky.
And yeah, if you have your own spooky questions, go on down to the Float Tank Solutions SpookyEmporium.com
/spooky.
and send in your questions.
All right.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Alrighty. Bye.